Good day, class. In this video, we are going to continue the discussion on the accomplishments of Chinese medicine. In this session, we aim to introduce the most phenomenal achievements in Chinese medicine. Most of them were the earliest information of this kind in the medical field. In the previous video, we have introduced the medical books from different terms in the past. Next one, we are going to introduce Hua Tuo. Hua Tuo was one of the most famous practitioners in Chinese medicine history. Hua Tuo was famous due to his skills in surgery. He's a very famous doctor in surgery. He lived about 1,800 years ago, about 100 to 200 AD. Hua Tuo and Ma Fei San. In the previous video, we introduced Bianque, the story of Bianque. We have studied the three stories of Bianque. The last story is the Bianque with the toxic one. I did mention that the story was from the literature book. It's not from the medical book. So although it mentions the toxic one from Bianque, the thoughts of general anesthetics, but we don't know what are the ingredients of the toxic one, how effective the toxic one is. We have no idea. So you may think that's just a story. But another toxic one, kind of toxic one, Ma Fei San, were invented by Hua Tuo. Hua Tuo was a practitioner in the history. We have records of Hua Tuo. He got the Ma Fei San. It worked exactly the same as the toxic one. It described that before the surgery, Dr. Hua Tuo will ask the patient to drink Ma Fei San. The patient will fall asleep during the surgery. So that's the actual facts of an anesthetic in Chinese medicine. However, unfortunately, the ingredient of Ma Fei San, we still haven't got the ingredients. That's because Hua Tuo was killed by the authorities at that time. So all his books, everything related to him, were destroyed. So we only have the name of this formula. We don't have the ingredients of this formula. When the time developed to about 150 AD to 220 AD, 1,800 years ago, there was one book, Sanghan Zabing Lun. This was one of the most important books, also one of the classic we're going to introduce later. In this book, it recorded some of the treatments, such as the purgatory for constipation, mouth-to-mouth breathing for emergency to rescue. These treatment techniques were the earliest records in the world in the medical field. 走后备急方. This book is the second time that we mentioned in our slides. You still remember where it is? Dr. Tu Youyou, where she found the artemisinin from this book. This book, for emergency, we also introduced the procedures of anemia. The anemia procedures, the detailed procedure were recorded in this book. So that's also quite an early invention. 生生急方. In the southern and northern dynastics, so this was about 1,500 years ago, the Chinese medicine practitioners realized that something related to thyroid gland, we can use the thyroid from the animal to treat the thyroid problem in human, because the hormone will remain in the thyroid of the animal. So the deer's thyroids were used to treat for human disease. 诸病源候论 in Qin Dynasty. Intestinal anastomosis and paint allergies were recorded in this book. So if something happens in the intestine, you can cut the parts and then you can rejoin them again. That were recorded in Qin Dynasty. 外台秘药 in Tang Dynasty. Diabetes were recorded, and also the practitioner discovered that the urine of the diabetic patient may be sweet. So that's a sign of diabetic 消渴. This is also one of the earliest records of this disease in the world. Still in Tang Dynasty, the first official pharmacopoeia in the world were published in Tang Dynasty. This pharmacopoeia, when we study in detail in the latest videos, you will know this pharmacopoeia actually was about 800 years than the one published in 800 years earlier than the one published in Europe. In Song Dynasty, there are departments of hair care in the hair care system. The Chinese medicine medical system has developed better and better. So we don't only focus on the treatments. We don't have only focus on have one department as a general practitioner, and as a general practice, we have different departments for different purposes. For example, 和剂局, the departments of the Bureau of Herbal Medicine, authentications. They're going to test which herb is authentic herbs, the quality of the herbs in this department. 惠民局, the department of medicine marketing and for charity clinics. 校正医书局 is see from the development for thousands of years, especially from 2,500 years ago until Song Dynasty. That's almost 1,000 years, or 1,000 to 1,500 years. And in the past, we don't have printers, we don't have copy machine, we don't have scanners. So how do you copy the books? We copy by hand. So once I got this copy, I will copy by hand. When I copy by hand, I might make mistake. And the second person copy from my version, he might make mistakes as well. So after these thousands of years, the practitioners realized there were many mistakes in our medical books. So in Song Dynasty, the government set up departments, 校正医书局. 校正 means correction. This was the first official publishing house for medical materials, for medical books. It's also the first one in the world. 洗冤集录. This is a book in forensic medicine. This is the first forensic monograph. In late 16th century, the Chinese medicine practitioner developed the technique of variolation for smallpox. The smallpox was quite an old disease. The first report was in first century, and for more than 1,000 years, there were no effective treatments for smallpox. And during this period, the practitioner realized that we may use variolation to prevent smallpox. And this technique by 1700 AD was spread to Africa, India, Europe, and that's where the vaccine comes from. That's the early thoughts of a vaccine, and the first report in Europe. It was about almost 200 years later after it was applied in China at the world. So that's the early form of vaccine of the immune system. The last topic that we are going to introduce in this video is the geographical characteristic of China. From the geographical characteristics, we will understand one of our questions. We also can answer in this way: why is Chinese medicine unique? As you can see, this map was 2,200 years ago, the boundary of China, Qin Dynasty. So you will say that this is much smaller than China now. That's the whole area of China. But we need to remember that 2,000 years ago, this area were the rural area. There were very few populations staying there. So the main part of China still stay in the east, in the southeast. Okay, after thousands of years development, more than 1,000 years, the Qin Dynasty, early 19th century, the boundary of China became this shape. As you can see, that's the main part still here. The boundary become bigger. We have some population in this area. And nowadays, the Mongolia has been independent and the rest remains similar. Okay, so this is the Qin Dynasty for thousands of years. And we have some populations here. Now from the map, we're going to use another map. You will understand why Chinese medicine is unique. As we said, these are the boundary of China. This is the boundary of Qin Dynasty, the original China, 2,000 years ago. No matter where they are, you will see from this map, in the east, in the southeast, that's the ocean. The South China Sea, the East China Sea. So these are the ocean. In the past, we don't have the sailing skill. We don't have good sailing skill. We do have a sailing skill, but we don't have the good sailing skill. So the people on the continent, they couldn't go away from here. So they limit from this direction. Can they go to the north? They can, but it is difficult. Because in the north, let's go be the desert. That's here, they block this area. The mountain, they block here to Russia. Another way from here, that's plain. It's also big mountains. So they block people to go to the north. That's not easy, especially in the past. While we don't have transport, the vehicles, we have to walk. So it's very difficult to go to the north. And then you said go to the west. The west is the plateau of Tibet and desert. So you will see that the plateau, the desert, is also not easy for someone by walking to go away from this area. So now you will see why the Chinese culture, the Chinese medicine become unique. Because the people in this area is very difficult to go away, no matter from which area. The plateau, the desert, the mountains, the ocean. So the culture has kept as it is thousands of years ago. And while the people of China could not go away, which means the people from other areas, from Russia, from Europe, from India, or from the ocean, they also difficult to come to China because of these boundaries, the geographic boundaries. They block them to go in, while they block the people goes in. They block the culture goes in. That's why the Chinese culture stays as it is. So these are some of the factors of keeping Chinese method unique. In this video, we have introduced the most phenomenal achievements in Chinese method. Many of them are the earliest or the first achievements in medical fields worldwide. From the next video, we're going to study in detail from the development, in details of the development from the ancient times. After these few discussions, I believe that you will have a general impressions in your mind that what Chinese medicine is or what acupuncture is, and also you will be able to answer why Chinese medicine is so unique. Also, from the discussion, from the history, you will understand why we need to study the history of Chinese medicine. For example, there are a few questions. There are some arguments in Chinese medicine, especially in recent decades. In the next few videos, you will see that Chinese medicine have improved significantly from thousands of years ago until now. However, some arguments come from the recent decades or even recent hundreds of years from 20th century to 21st century. There were no significant improvements in Chinese medicine. Why there's no improvements in Chinese medicine? In order to answer this question, you need to understand the development, the law of the development of Chinese medicine. Because Chinese medicine, you will see in future that the milestones in Chinese medicine, especially the theory, were from Huangdi Neijing, which were 2,500 years ago, to the next milestone was 1,800 years ago, 600 later. And the third milestone were in 17th century, almost 1,500 years later. So that's the development, the law of Chinese medicine. You can't say why is it very slow. This is very similar to, for example, we use the plants as an example. When you grow a tree, you won't see the tree growing every day. Or when you raise the puppy in your home, you will see the puppy growing every day. But you see, as a human being, as a newborn baby, you won't see the changes every day. You will see the changes every month, because the changes are very, very small. You won't realize every day. And for the trees, you won't even see changes in 1 month. But you can't say the tree's development is very slow. Why there's no development of the tree in this a few weeks? Because that's the law of the tree. Similar to here, this is the law of Chinese medicine. So you need to understand the development of Chinese medicine from the history in order to answer this question. The second question is that the religion, we still focus on the religion, especially as a traditional medicine. people confused about the religion. Where does Chinese medicine come from? What's the relationship between Chinese medicine and the religion and the spiritual? In order to answer this question, you also need to study the history. A Professor A says so, Professor B says so. What's the argument? Do you agree or not? How can you convince yourself to accept one opinion? From the history, you need to understand the history, then you won't be misled. You won't be misled by others' opinion. For example, someone tell you that Chinese medicine has religions in their they practice spiritual in their practice. If you know the history, you will say that's not true, because in the history we separate from the spiritual to the medical 2,500 years ago, not even something recently. And also, after studying the history, you will be familiar with some of the milestones, especially for the medical books. If you are facing problems in your practice in future, you will know where to find the books, where to find the answers. As I mentioned previously, Chinese medicine is very different from other medical science or other science. When you face problem, don't always focus on the articles. Look back to the old books, back to the old medical books. These are the experience from the previous practitioners. These are the experience accumulation for thousands of years. That's a treasure for us, for our practice. And also, after studying the history, you also will be able to identify some common mistakes or common misunderstandings in Chinese medicine. For example, Chinese medicine or other traditional medicine, conventional medicine, complementary medicine or alternative medicine. We always claim that we are natural medicine. So what's the natural medicine? Does the natural medicine means we don't use chemicals? We have to use plants. Natural means plants. Does it mean so? Do we use chemicals? So I'm not going to give you the answer now. After the videos in future, you will be able to answer these questions by yourself. And also another very common phenomenon around us from the science. For example, the vegetable smoothie is very popular, especially in Western countries. In science, is it healthy? Is it good for your health? Although it's from the science, although it is very popular, and even some professions also recommend to use this kind of vegetable smoothie. Are they healthy? Are they really benefit your health? Yes. What's the reason? No. What's the reason? So after studying the history, you also will be able to identify the misunderstanding, which is correct, which is wrong. The third question, Chinese medicine and witchcraft. What's the difference between them? Is there any connection between these? And the last and most important, but not the least, does Chinese medicine as a traditional medicine do we object to the new technologies? We need to keep our tradition, so we don't need any technologies. We don't need any developments. Is it true? Yes. What's the reason? No. Why? So after studying the history, you will know how Chinese medicine developed from 2003 to 3,000 years ago until now. From the whole development, you will see what has changed, what has been remained in this field. And then you will know what's the next step of Chinese medicine. What's the future of the Chinese medicine? Thank you for your attention.